Hey, Carol, professional Ikea hacker, Peak Furnishings. I'm working the beautiful vanity light slash mirror. It kind of has to work together so it's compliant. But I want to talk to you about, today I'm going to breach the subject of the lowest bidder, the lowest cost. Oftentimes when I present a quote, I send it out and somebody says, oh, that came in high. Or they'll say, yeah, but what are you going to do for this amount of money? You know, somebody else said, you know, the same thing for half the cost. And I'll say, well, you know, I don't, you know, if here you've got an identical project, why don't you go with that person? Reasonable. I mean, look, you've got high and low, you go with the low. Do you know where the myth, it's a myth, of the lowest bid comes from? The myth of the lowest bid comes from commercial projects. I've been a tradesperson for the last 20 years. Ever since I dropped out of university, I wanted to be an engineer. That was my passion. I wanted to be creative. I think engineers kind of, you know, they do and they create things. So I wanted to be creative. I wanted to build things. And look, you know what? Today I do the same thing. So about 20 years in the biz. Lots and lots of commercial projects under my belt, whether it was flooring, whether it was cabinetry, mostly just flooring and cabinetry. Those were like kind of my main trades where I did a lot of commercial work. And people who design for commercial projects, they intrinsically understand that the moment that piece of paper gets faxed over for a quote and the owner of the business receives it, there's going to be a plunge to the bottom. I mean, there's going to be a race to the bottom. How do we save money? How do I make my bid more appealing? And in commercial projects, it's just about the money. Because commercial projects are spec'd out to death. I'll give you an example. I remember I did some really fancy commercial projects. If you're in Ontario, if you are a fancy lawyer, you probably sit in a very fancy boardroom. I did that millwork. I worked for somebody else, so I wasn't working for myself at that time. And you know, that's okay, you gotta start somewhere, but my own hands built that fancy project, so I know. So before that fancy project started, my shop foreman came over with a big, sort of like a little flip book for adults, for cabinet makers, and he would go with whip out this highlighter, his pink highlighter. His name was John. He was from Hong Kong, and he actually studied cabinetry and millwork in Hong Kong. I don't know. He retired by now, so he must have been a very young man. And he would go and he would highlight through all the pages of drafts, blueprints, specifications. He would highlight, Carol, pay attention here. Make sure this gets built this way. You know, flip the pages. Just, you know, I know how to build. We knew in the shop how to build, but there were very specific things that had to be executed in order for the project to be successful. So make sure the backs are this specific thickness. Make sure that the screws used in fabrication of this project are this length and not shorter. Make sure adhesives are used there, and there. You know, that's the level of specifications that we would have. So there was absolutely no room for error. There was no way to say, look, I'm gonna save money by going with a thinner back, which affects the rigidity of the box. I'm gonna use shorter screws, right? Shorter screws. You know what? Longer screws go in deeper, they hold that box better. When you're mounting big, heavy things, you want to use appropriate length of screws. You don't want to be saving money there. You know, if there was a request to use adhesive on that particular project, make sure that the adhesive is used. And the reason for that, if there ever was a failure, they could go back and say, look, this was spec'd out. This isn't correct. It failed. It was easy to point the finger if there was a failure. If you ever go look at the reviews for businesses, you will notice that there's never any mention of commercial projects. Like nobody says, oh, this millwork at Tommy Hilfiger sucked, or you know, this, you know, Gap or you know, Old Navy benches, you know, it's wobbly. No, it wouldn't be. It was built properly. Somebody who knew who was doing, designed it, and they spec'd it out absolutely everything, and it got built exactly the way they wanted. Now, take this and put it in a residential market. In the residential market, it's an absolute wild, wild west. I have never encountered that level of specification on a residential project, because it's work. You gotta have a designer, you gotta have a general contractor, you gotta have somebody sitting there thinking, that's how I, reviewing that project, make sure this is, that's how we're gonna build it. Before actually, the first step on any commercial project that I was involved with was, there was a little big stamp at the bottom says, do not attempt to build unless the dimensions are verified. So before I even started the project, my manager, because there were a couple of managers on the floor, he would go out with a laser level with his laser tape or laser measuring, and he would confirm all the openings. That's correct size. Or he would come back to me and say, Carol, this is 1 inch less. Make sure we build the doors accordingly, because all the doors have to be the same dimension. We can't have one door 1 inch less. So make sure that this dimension is less, and make sure all the doors are built narrower so they look balanced and they look the same. So that's the first step. And I have seen personally, let me tell you, millwork that was built where the dimensions were not verified, and suddenly, the framer took it 6 inches higher. I've seen beautiful $30,000 millwork built 6 inches shorter. And you know what happened afterwards? There was some upsetness. The client was unhappy, didn't want to pay the money. The owner was upset because somebody built this without checking. All right? And you know what? Do you want to be part of something like that? Do you want your personal space to be a source of conflict because somebody didn't verify the dimensions, this wasn't built properly? It just doesn't make sense. I achieve success when the client achieves success. When this project just absolutely is well crafted, well built, well designed, fits the space wonderfully, like wow, you're wowed. You want to go there and experience it again. That's what I want to bring out. Failures happen like this. There's usually about 4 layers of hands that a project goes through before it lands on, or it used to land on my bench. And at every step, there was a cut of money being taken away. I was the lowest of the low, yeah. I had my drills and I was there, screwing and, getting paid my wage. But I was at the lowest level. Now, let's say never at the top. Never at the top, because if you signed a contract for a project, your contract is sold. This guy's moving on. He's got to grab another one. He needs to keep generating this. So it passes lower. And then somebody else, then then the bids go out. This person's lower. They send it to them, and then the boss gets it. Okay, Carol, save it. They don't want to save the $10. You know who's going to save the $10? Somebody at the very bottom. To them, that $10 represent, it's a sandwich, a cookie, and a coffee from a coffee truck they're going to pick up at noon when it drives by. So instead of those, so they're going to save the $10. They're going to use shorter screws. They're going to use thinner back. The tube of PL construction adhesive, which I use religiously on all my installations because it makes projects very strong. That's $10. And most likely by the time this project starts, so it's not used. $10 is saved, sandwich is bought and eaten, coffee's drank, cookies, delicious. And by the time this project starts showing wear and tear, it's getting wobbly, something's off, sagging, rubbing, you know what? It misses that final $10 that could have been put longer screws, better backs, more rigid backs, construction adhesive. That's what it is. So you as somebody who's purchasing those services have really, first off, you're trusting that person that they're going to do the right thing. So you are reliant on the lowest cost bidder for your project. So I always say, choose wisely. I follow this Insta Drama account. So it's a luxury multi-million-dollar mansion built in Toronto, and it's a luxury builder. Luxury build gone wrong. And I'm reading about this project. So here we are, a management fee of $300,000. I say, give me $300,000. But anyway, so there's a management fee of $300,000. And then you see all the trades that were involved with this project. And I say, oh my God, I mean, you are building, you're taking on a project that is massive in scope, massive in scale, to me. This person is buying absolutely finest finishes. They're buying oiled white plank floors, stuff like that. They're buying like really pretty tiles for their marble. And slowly over the course of the year, things are starting to fail. Things are moving, are cracking, are peeling off. There are leaks. And as I go through the list of trades that were involved, I'm like, wow, a failure at every single step. Somebody didn't care. This is not done properly. It's not my business. Just do it. That should have been inspected and stopped, fixed before the next level of finish came in. But that was not done. So as you have these little failures that keep adding until you have a big failure. When you have a renovation, and then at the end of it, 2 years later, your tiles start popping off, and your kitchen's already sitting on it, and your plumbing's been installed, and the heating has been installed on the floor, but your tiles are failing. What do? It wasn't prepped up, it wasn't prepared, somebody wasn't paying attention, there was no oversight. That's how it is. The lowest bidder, it's even the most luxurious work. Even the best projects are executed by the lowest paid workers. So you have to make sure that there's some integrity there on the part of the business owner, that it gets proper oversight, that it gets properly, spec'd out, and make sure it's prepped up before a next step comes in. And if it is not, you stop it and you fix it before moving forward. That's how I do it. And there's no profits realized in fixing mistakes. One of my wonderful mentors told me that. The first thing he said, Carol, there are no profits realized in fixing mistakes. So you know what? I want to make sure that on my projects, absolutely everything is followed. I will meet with every trade, discuss the projects. Sometimes I hold their hand because I'm not licensed for it, plumbing or electrical. Because I want to make sure that my vision gets realized and it's best, and you will love it. And when you come in, you open it, they're like, that's what I want to deliver. Solid results. Friends, lowest cost bidders only cause problems. It's not a benefit. That's how it is. Ciao.